Now, what else? Oh yeah, just the last thing that I had on my notes, which I think is quite interesting. Dan Brady's done a big special on the IPL for the Age newspaper in Australia, and in the fourth episode, he talked about live cricket. I think I might have mentioned this before because it's something that made a lot of sense to me. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's an article a year or so back where Greg Norman talks about IPL cricket, and he was sort of talking about the fact that with Live Golf, they were trying to do what the IPL had done. And I, reading between the lines, thought that he thought that Saudi Arabia could get involved with T20 cricket as well. Um, which is not that much different to what Major League Cricket is doing, right? You know, it's a very similar kind of thing. So I thought that was fascinating at the time, and obviously that's gone on to be even more fascinating now that there is certainly a plan there that has come out. But for those who don't understand, so Live Golf is a rebel league. So when we call things rebel leagues, we do make them sound slightly sexier than they do. Like we call the players who played in apartheid South Africa rebel players, but it's an illegitimate league, I suppose, in that it is not one of the major golf leagues. It has come up into it's a different kind of format. They play less golf. They have played all their players, so they don't really play for prize money as much as they used to. They more play for. It's the best way of putting it. They are almost playing more like paid more like wrestlers, I suppose. And I don't mean that in a way that the golf is fixed, but I mean that they're getting appearance fees, and that's where the majority of their money is coming from, which is not the case with them playing in a normal golf tournament. Um, Although a lot of players still get appearance fees, but in this case, the appearance fee is the reason that they are playing, and they're obviously getting hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases to play in these leagues. And so it has upset golf. You would say that the PGA Tour in America was asking for this. They probably haven't treated their golfers as well as they could have. They've got a very bad reputation with the golfers. If there's a documentary called Happy Gilmore that you could watch that talks about this. But it was a bit of an unsexy environment. With that in mind, if you can put together the best 20, 25, 30 golfers in the world, play them on beautiful, specially made golf courses in Saudi Arabia, you can get a fairly decent audience in. That's what Live Golf is. The reason the Saudi Arabia are looking to do this is obviously they've already been involved in football, they've been involved in golf, they've been involved in Formula One. They are trying to sports wash their image. They have a particularly bad image around the world. I don't think there's that many people who are pro-Saudi when you look at the governing of that country and the royal family and everything else. So they're doing what a lot of countries have done before. The interesting thing with golf is that golf is kind of a conservative sport. It's even maybe more so than cricket in certain ways. And so for it to be sort of wrestled away from the governors of the game and given to Saudi Arabia has caused a lot of problems. That's Live Golf. And that's where we are. I actually was interviewed because I wrote a huge piece on Greg Norman, which I know maybe one day we'll try and turn into a video essay. I might even, I've talked to Greg before. I might even be able to get him onto the thing, especially if he's involved in this Live Cricket thing. But because I'd written this big piece, I was interviewed by him. Sorry, about him by a woman who was writing a big feature on him a while back, and she was sort of saying that why doesn't he just admit that Saudi Arabia is terrible and he shouldn't be taking their money? And in the last few days, someone in Australia was talking about Live Golf and was talking about what I was telling this woman, which is that the first thing that you need to know is that a lot of athletes are not politically on, they're not politically left, but they're also not politically savvy on left or right issues. There aren't that many cricketers who know that much about politics. They don't follow politics that much. So that's the first thing that you need to know. Then the second thing you need to know is that a lot of these athletes have taken money from very, very random things. Have a look at how many people in cricket have been taking money from crypto companies. Now, I'm not saying all crypto companies are scams and that the whole system is a scam, but it doesn't feel like it's a great system. Look at how many cricketers took money from NFT companies and promoted NFT products, right? Supplement products, alcohol, betting, all these sorts of things that you could argue are also not particularly good for society. Now, you can argue that what Saudi Arabia does, because it's state sanctioned, is far worse than everything else. But I've had discussions with high level cricketers about people they have dinner with, about companies that they take money from, about deals that they do, products that they spruik. They don't think about it in the same way that we do. And so I find that the whole thing about Saudi Arabia is very, very interesting in that as long as it's something that's already accepted within your sport, you can take money from. But if it's something that's not, that is still dodgy, then it causes a problem. But a lot of this is just that the PGA specifically is upset that Saudi Arabia have come in and bought their best golfers, right? So let's go back to cricket. It's a very, very tough thing for Saudi Arabia to get to the same point with cricket, only because the BCCI has already actualized their money in a way and capitalized on it in a much better way than the PGA did. That said, when the international cricketers, when there was a rebel league that was being looked at, which was the ZTV owner and Lalit Modi and Dean Kaino, when they were sort of involved in this rebel league, we know that David Warner was offered $50 million and that he was thinking of accepting that. If you went to a bunch of the best players in the world now and you offered them $100 million contracts, $150 million contracts, which is what we know in LIV Golf, that's to let's say the top 20 players in the world, what percentage of those players would say yes? I would say huge, not all of them, because we've seen even in LIV Golf, not always everyone accepting that, but we've seen a lot of people accepting that kind of money. They would have to play a lot more cricket. There's also the whole idea of playing cricket in Saudi Arabia, which may not be everyone's cup of tea. I know, I probably prefer not to play cricket there for a long period of time. As someone who was an analyst in UAE cricket, in UAE, it's bloody hard enough, sitting on a laptop. I can't imagine, having to play in those conditions over and over again. There'll probably be air-conditioned stadiums and everything else, because that's the way of the world now, as we saw in the Football World Cup. But there will be issues there. There will be issues about how much time people want to spend in Saudi Arabia. The UAE, I personally don't like spending any time in the UAE, but a lot of cricketers do. Maybe they'll just see it as an extension of that. But on a money thing, if you are looking at paying, I don't know, let's say to do a good league, they need 150 players, right? Just random number, 10 teams, 15 players a team. And you offered the bottom tier players 500,000 to $1 million, and you offered, let's say you top 10 to 20 players 50 to 150 million, and then you offered a bunch of other players anywhere between that sort of 1 million and 10 million amount. That's really interesting numbers once you start to get into that sort of stuff. How sustainable is it? Does it cause a rift? How many players say no just because they want to continue playing international cricket? Can you still play international cricket? How does it affect the IPL? How does it affect the BCCI? Can they match those numbers? It's an absolutely fascinating one going ahead, and I think cricket will probably be the next sport to be doing something along these lines. Anyway, it will be something that I'll look at further ahead, especially if we hear anything else. It may be something that bubbles out, but I think, and I've said this a lot, that I think cricket is very, very I think cricket is in a situation where it is very, very easy to be able to sort of rip it apart and buy it from the outside. And my big question was who was going to have that money. Obviously, ZTV was certainly someone that were looking at that sort of money, but the Saudi government is the place that could do that. It's a fascinating one anyway.